Hey friends, it's Just the Gems. I'm Brandon. 2024, as we know it, has come to an end. And that's fine. I think it's been a pretty good year, all things considered, as far as JRPGs go. It's been a tumultuous year in every other area, but JRPGs, hey, they've been keeping it pretty steady, pretty solid. I don't think it's hard to argue that this wasn't a great year, and it's pretty easy to argue that it's one of the best that we've ever had. However, that does not mean that 2025 can't top it. And there are a few different paths that it could take to actually come out as a better year than 2024. Now, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't have an industry insider that's feeding me information. I just don't. But what I do have are some predictions about the JRPG landscape in 2025. So I want to share those with you. And what I would love is if you agree with any of these, let me know in the comments. If you completely disagree, you think I'm way off base, let me know that too. And anything else, any other predictions that you might have, share them below because I really want to talk about this. It's such an interesting topic to me because now that we know what has happened in 2024, it opens up the door for all these possibilities in 2025. Things that I was maybe even hoping for this year. It just makes it all the more likely that they'll happen next year. So that's exciting to me. Am I setting myself up for disappointment? Nah, it'll be great. Okay, so let's get into it. All right, first up, I have a handful of what I would say are maybe slightly more likely scenarios. Like, I would probably bet money on these if I was a betting man. I'm not so much a betting man. I'm a put $20 in the slot machine, lose it immediately, and walk away sad kind of guy. But as far as JRPGs go and the upcoming year, these feel like more of a sure bet. So let's talk about those first. Number one is Persona 6. Obviously, Persona 6 has been in development for several years at this point, right? Atlas has been working on it. They had Metaphor being helmed by a parallel team, so they weren't putting all of their eggs in the Metaphor basket. They need multiple pillars to hold up their company, and Persona is definitely one of those pillars, right? So Persona 6 is in the works. It is, I kind of expected it to be announced at the Game Awards. There were rumors going around that was going to happen. Obviously did not happen. So I don't know if it was planned and somebody got their wires crossed and leaked it and then it was canceled or what, but that revelation didn't happen. So 2025, I would even guess within the first 6 months, but by the summer, we're going to see Persona 6. And, you know, does that mean it's coming out in 2025? Most likely not. Atlas likes to drag out these things. They announced Metaphor like 9 years ago and it just came, you know what I mean? They love to get ahead of themselves. Persona 6, I don't expect we'll be waiting that long, but I would say probably 2026, end of 2026 is when we would actually expect the game. But by midway into 2025, they will have started the hype train, put it on the tracks, gave it a push, and it's going to be chugging along, and we're going to keep it going because we're going to be posting theories and hypotheses about the different characters and the scenario and what's going on. I'm going to put it out there right now. I think Persona 6, obviously the color is going to be green. All right, we've hit yellow, we've hit blue, we've hit red with 3, 4, and 5. Not respectively. I said those in the wrong order, but I'm not going to do the take again. I'm just going to let it slide. Just let it slide. I'm taking it easy on myself, all right? It's vacation time. I'm trying to take it easy. So green feels like the next logical color. So Persona 6, the theme color will be green, and I think it's going to take place on a college campus. Why do I think that? Especially after one of the bigwigs behind Persona came out and said that the reason the protagonist is always a male college or high school student is because it's about growing up and blah, blah, blah. Because I think sometimes they just say stuff. They want to sound like they have something interesting to say in interviews. I get it. I would probably do the same thing. I don't think that they're really thinking that deep about it. Like, they've used the school setting several times. It's worked out for them. They may want to stretch themselves a bit and setting it on a college campus with adults who are technically adults, but really are still like teenagers. That gives them the flexibility to maybe go in a darker direction in some cases, but still have the fallback of, okay, these are kids, these are teenagers, they're growing up, whatever. So yes, green college. I would almost put money on that. I'd almost put money on it. I'm not going to. I would, because I don't want to jinx it. Here's the other thing about these predictions, guys, real quick. I feel like every time I bet on something, the opposite happens. So I'm kind of afraid that by saying all of these things that I think are sure things, I'm jinxing it so that none of them are going to happen. If that does occur, I want you to call me out on it. I want you to blame me for all of these things that I'm about to say. If they don't happen in 2025, it's on me. And I accept that. But I'm hoping this breaks the curse. I'm hoping this breaks my losing streak of being wrong about every prediction. We'll see. Okay, next up. Number 2, Dragon Quest 12. Right? Dragon Quest 12 was first announced how many years ago? Several years ago at this point. 2021? 22? A long time ago. We have seen nothing except some fiery text in the ground that said Dragon Quest 12. I don't know. I have not paid a ton of attention to the Dragon Quest series over the years. I didn't really start paying attention to Dragon Quest again until after 11 was imminently out. So I saw a bunch of stuff about 11 leading up to its release, and then I purchased it and loved it, and then I went back and started playing the older games. But I didn't have like the anticipation of Dragon Quest 11, so I wasn't paying attention to the release schedule and like what trailers they were putting out and all that stuff. So maybe 11 was similar, maybe every one of them has been similar, where it's been announcement of the game happening and then 5 years of nothing, and then the game suddenly appears. Maybe that's the way it's been, I don't know. But regardless, I feel like we're due for something at this point. If the game has been in development for that whole time, and they haven't just been teasing us, then I would love to see something from Dragon Quest 12. This one, I actually would be a little more on the side of thinking that we would get more information early in the year, maybe at the Switch 2 announcement in January, and we would see the release of the game later on in 2025. I don't think that they're going to keep us on the hook for 18 months or 2 years with Dragon Quest 12. I think once they're ready to show it, they're going to show it, and then they're going to release it without too much of a tail. Because I just get the sense that why belabor it? Everybody knows it's coming. It's not like that's going to be a surprise. Even if they hadn't done the trailer or the teaser trailer thing announcing the title that it was coming, I don't think anybody is shocked that it's coming. So they don't need to drag it out. It's not going to. They're not Atlas. Atlas does it they have their own reasons for doing it. I don't think Square Enix has that same tendency. So I think we'll see it later this year. I'm kind of curious what changes they're going to make. I got the sense from the little bits of information that have come out, interviews, etc., that maybe this is going to be something more of a departure from the Dragon Quest formula than previous games have been. I mean, every game has been different. Every game has changed things up in some way, but there's always been that kind of core of nostalgia that's been there, and that's something that people really enjoy about the series. I don't think that those things are going to go away. I think those will still remain, but I would not be shocked if there was another wrinkle thrown in. Like, Dragon Quest X was a massively multiplayer online game. Right? Like, who figured that was coming? So I think that maybe there's something, maybe there'll be a little more, maybe it'll do something similar to Trails Through Daybreak and Metaphor and have optional, action-based combat in addition to the classic turn-based combat that everyone loves. That would be an interesting wrinkle. That's the sort of thing I mean. So I don't think they're going to drastically change the game and make it something completely different, but they may add some things in there for people to do if they want to. So I'm really looking forward to that. As sort of a sub prediction here to Dragon Quest 12, I think we're going to see Dragon Quest X offline version in English this summer. I'm saying it's happening. We're going to get a trailer for it early on this winter in 2025, and it's going to come out this summer. Primary platform will probably be the Switch, and we're going to be happy to finally have the 10th Dragon Quest game, which is the only one that we have never officially gotten because it was an online game. They created an offline version with like chibi style graphics, which I thought was kind of weird. I would have loved to see it with more of a Dragon Quest 11 style, but whatever. So I think that that's coming, and I think we're going to get it middle of next year. Number 3, I think it's probably safe to start expecting another Tales of game. Bandai Namco this is their flagship JRPG series, and the last one we got was Tales of Arise several years ago. I feel like I remember it being one of the earliest games that I had on my PlayStation 5. So yeah, it's been several years at this point since Tales of Arise came out. They have the story DLC that they released. I don't know how often they do that throughout history with the Tales of games. But, you know, they were releasing new content for it. I think 2025 is when we, at the very least, learn about the next entry. Would not shock me if that came out more early 2026, but we are definitely going to hear about the next Tales of game. I don't think it's going to be a direct sequel to Arise or any of the other ones. I think it's going to be a new entry. I think that I get the sense that with the Arise DLC, maybe they're getting comfortable with the idea of telling more stories in the same world via downloadable content instead of creating a whole new game and putting it out. So that's my theory, my prediction, is that the next Tales of game will be announced. Probably won't see it until 2026, but we will get information. We will learn the name, learn a little bit about the world sometime in 2025. Yes, for sure. All right, we all know that Final Fantasy Tactics and Final Fantasy IX have been due to receive a remake because of that NVIDIA leak I don't know how long ago it was, 2 years ago now. They leaked that these games were coming, and there were a whole bunch of other games on the list, and every other one of those games ended up being true. The only ones that haven't come true yet are Final Fantasy Tactics and 9 remakes. So I think unless those were canceled due to, I don't know, the changing market, or I don't know. I think that those are coming, especially Final Fantasy IX, because it's my understanding that Square is working with some sort of production company to make like an animated Final Fantasy IX series. It feels like it would be a weird thing to do if they weren't planning a significant re-release of Final Fantasy IX, unless that got canceled too. I don't know. But I think we're definitely going to see Final Fantasy Tactics and Final Fantasy IX. Let me put it this way. My prediction is, if those two games are still happening, if we're getting those remakes, we will hear about them in 2025, in the first half of the year. At this point, it will be the first half of the year. We will hear about them. We have to. Before we go on to the next category, the last sure thing, I think we're going to hear about the next Trails entry, both on the localization side with NIS America and Gung Ho handling Trails in the Sky first chapter. But also we're going to hear from Falcom about the next entry post Kai. So what we're going to hear about in 2025 is a release date, definitive release date for whatever Kai no Kiseki ends up being translated as in English. So the next Trails game, which is already out in Japan, it's going to come out here much sooner than previous entries have come out. They are catching up. They are working towards the goal of day and date worldwide releases, right? So they're closing in on that. Gung Ho releasing Trails in the Sky first chapter on the same date as the Japanese release all around the world at the end of 2025. That's a big step in the direction, but getting Kai no Kiseki out as soon as possible over here is another big part of that plan. So we're going to get a definitive release date and name and everything probably in 2025. I wouldn't be shocked if it came out Q4 of 2025, if not first quarter of 2026 in America. But we're also going to hear about the next Trails game, whether it's the introduction of the first game in the final arc, or if it's going to be some sort of intermediary sort of game like Trails into Reverie was, or Trails in the Sky the Third was. We're going to hear about the next Trails game in general, and that is going to be big news. And then we're going to, I guess, be in preparation for that series to come to an end in the next few years, because I believe the idea is that they are gearing up for what will probably be the final arc of the story. So we're going to hear the first bit of information about that in 2025. Okay, now these are the things that are maybe a little more of a long shot. I don't feel as good about them. Some of them are because I've been bitten before. I've been burned by these thoughts, these intrusive but glorious thoughts. And others are just because I don't know if the market is as supportive of these things as I would be. Like, I would buy all of the things that I'm talking about. I don't know if the general JRPG market agrees with me or cares, but I'm going to throw them out there. Let me know what you think. Okay, first up, I think that we're going to see another Square Enix remake of a 16-bit game that we didn't receive in America, right? So we've had Live Alive, fantastic HD 2D game. We've had Romancing Saga 2 just this year, came out and a really fantastic game. Like, I've never been a Saga guy, but playing that, I'm like, okay, like, this is the Saga game. This is how you get into Saga. It's a very, very, very good game. So I think that we are going to at least get an announcement of another 16-bit revitalization remake, whether it's something like Bahamut Lagoon or Treasure of the Rudras. Like, that would be amazing. Like, Bahamut Lagoon, I'm a little iffier on as far as whether I would be that excited about it. But Treasure of the Rudras looks like one of the Square Enix games. It's definitely the Square Enix game from the 16-bit era that I most regret that we didn't get, because it just seems very cool. So I would love if that was announced. Do I think that it's the reason I don't think it's as likely to happen? I think it will happen. But do I think an announcement of one of these games getting remade is going to happen in 2025? I don't know. Because Romancing Saga 2 just came out this past year, 2024, I don't know if they're going to have another one lined up ready to go to announce yet. Maybe they will, and that's why I'm putting it on the list. So I would love to see it. I really hope so. Fingers crossed. Next up, this is one that I'm really worried about jinxing. I really don't want to jinx this, but I do feel like we should talk about it. And it's the possibility of some Xeno-related collaboration. Okay, so brief spoilers for the very end of the DLC for Xenoblade 3. Okay, if you want to skip ahead 40 seconds, do so now. But at the end of Xenoblade 3's DLC, it's revealed that basically this has all been happening in the universe of Xenosaga, and the game, the DLC, ends with what is heavily implied to be Cosmos returning to the planet Earth, just like happened at the end of Xenosaga Episode 3. What I would love to see is some sort of coming together of the entire Xeno series, right? You have Xenogears on the PlayStation from Square Enix, you have Xenosaga from Bandai Namco, and you have Xenoblade from Nintendo. If any company has the power and the influence to make something like this happen, it's definitely Nintendo. And Nintendo fully owns Monolith Soft. It is a first-party developer. So if it's ever going to happen, I think it's now. And we already saw that there was collaboration. Cosmos and Telos were both in Xenoblade 2 as sort of like cameo characters or whatever. But like, obviously there's some kind of dialogue there. And Tetsuya Takahashi, as the creator of the series, has, presumably a good enough relationship with the people over at Bandai Namco that was possible, and Nintendo has a good relationship with them as well. Like, they worked on Smash Brothers, so like they have a good relationship. And if there's ever going to be a time when we would see some sort of collaboration between the different parts of the greater Xenoverse, not the Dragon Ball Xenoverse, you know what I mean? Then I think this is the time. This is when it's most likely to happen. And it's been a while since we've had a Xeno announcement, right? Xenoblade 3 is a few years old at this point. Are we going to see something maybe at the Nintendo Direct where they announce the Switch 2? That would be great. That's when we saw Xenoblade 2, as you recall, was at the Switch reveal trailer. or the Switch reveal show. What? I don't know. I'm just too excited. I can't think. You know what I'm saying? So there's a good chance that we'll see something Xeno related, and I would love it if it was something that brought together the worlds of these different series that Tetsuya Takahashi has worked on, because you can tell that he has a lot of love for all of them. So fingers crossed. The reason I say this is less likely is just because, a wink and a nod here and there is one thing, but a full-on shared IP collaboration sort of thing is there's a big difference there. That's a very different story. So if Nintendo and Bandai and Square or whoever was able to work out something, great. Is that super likely to happen? I will admit, no, it's not super likely, but fingers crossed. The last thing I want to talk about, the last and probably the least likely of them all, because of course, is a revival of the Chrono series. Okay? From the moment I finished Chrono Trigger back in 1995, I wanted a sequel so bad. I loved Chrono Trigger so much. I played it so many times. Chrono Cross came out in the year 2000. So excited. I was so excited in the lead up to that game. I bought the soundtrack. It's one of the first things I ever imported. I didn't know what I was doing. I don't know how I pulled it off, but I was able to. I ordered it and had the soundtrack and listened to it a billion times before the game even came out. I was so pumped. I played it. It wasn't exactly what I wanted it to be, but I still really enjoyed it. And I was like, okay, well, now we have a Chrono series, right? Like in a few years, we're going to get the next Chrono game, and maybe I'll like it even more than Cross, and maybe it'll approach the level of, glory that Trigger had. And then, Chrono Break was announced, sort of, or the copyright for Chrono Break was filed and then abandoned. And, well, you know. Never happened. The story was recycled into what became Final Fantasy Dimensions 2 for mobile, and that was just not to be. But then, in 2022, we got technically the first new localized piece of Chrono content in 22 years. We got Radical Dreamers' official English localization as part of the Chrono Cross remaster. So you could actually play Radical Dreamers in its entirety on modern platforms. Radical Dreamers is, of course, just a text-based adventure game. It's not really much of an RPG. There is some combat, but it's, if you've played it, it's mostly just a text-based adventure, which is great. And I think it's a really cool addition to the world. And I'm totally cool with series that I love taking big experimental swings. But, it's not a full-on Chrono game. So the fact that they brought Chrono Cross back and gave us Radical Dreamers, like they invested time and effort into localizing the game. I'm sure it wasn't $1 billion. They didn't spend $1 billion bringing it over here, but like they still invested the time and the effort into doing it. That suggests to me that maybe there are people at Square Enix still who love and appreciate Chrono Trigger, Radical Dreamers, Chrono Cross, and maybe they will want to do something with this IP that has just been dormant, right? We just had Hironobu Sakaguchi working with Square Enix to put out Fantasia Neo Dimension for his company Mistwalker. Hironobu Sakaguchi, obviously one of the members of the Dream Team that made Chrono Trigger, and I think probably one of the reasons that they've been so afraid to touch the series is because of how beloved it was and how the creators that they had working on it were held in such high esteem. Obviously, in 2024, we lost Akira Toriyama, which is really unfortunate, but the other members of that Dream Team are still around and still, I think, work for Square Enix. A lot of them. You've got Yuji Horii, who's still kicking, working on Dragon Quest. Nobuo Uematsu, who's at Mistwalker, and, he only contributed a little bit to Chrono Trigger to begin with, so Yasunori Mitsuda, bring him in. And Hironobu Sakaguchi's right there. He's taking their phone calls. So if the Dream Team is the reason that we're afraid to make this Chrono series happen, then now's the time to do it. These guys are still around. They're still making games. I have been expecting a Chrono revival every year since Chrono Cross came out. I've been, if not expecting, then at least crossing my fingers and hoping. So I don't have any reason, really, to think that 2025 is going to be any different. But I wanted to put this in here because I just wanted to vocalize it. And hopefully you feel the same way. We really need a Chrono series revival. We need to bring we need to make this a series. It's barely a series. We need to make this a series. It was always intended to be a series. They never meant for it to be some holy grail that was put up on a pedestal and never touched. They wanted to do a series out of it. For I'm sure a variety of reasons that didn't happen, and over time it's become a legend, and we need to bring it back down to earth and make some more games out of it. It's a great the Chrono series is great. What we have now is great. If that's all it ever is, okay. But I feel like it would be a missed opportunity. So please, Square Enix, if you're listening, please bring back the Chrono series. Give us some new games. You can do it. I believe in you. Okay, that's it. I've rambled for long enough about my predictions for 2025. Let me know if you agree with me or disagree with me down in the comments. Let me know your own predictions. I would love to hear what you think is going to happen. It might be worth talking about, so let's start a conversation down there, why don't we? Also, if you wouldn't mind liking the video if you did like it, and if you're not subscribed and you have watched more than one of my videos before and you tend to enjoy the sorts of stuff that I talk about on here, would you mind subscribing? Because that really helps out a lot. If you do enjoy my content, having you subscribe actually really does help me, and I really appreciate it. Anyway, I hope you all are having a really solid end to 2024, and until next time, bye.